What's going on, everybody? It's EricRayweather back here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going over 5 big ways that the next-gen consoles will be changing Madden 21. And not really just Madden 21, you know, all games in general, but I guess since this channel is more Madden, we'll say all sports games, right? This is going to happen for all sports games, but most specifically, we'll talk Madden, because it's a Madden channel, right? Now, if you do want to stay up to date on all the latest Madden 21 news, if you're new, if you're kind of a lurker on the channel, next week, we have Madden 21 gameplay, features, a lot of news coming out. If you don't want to miss that, make sure you subscribe, turn on the bell notifications so that you get notified when those videos go live and the news goes live so you don't miss anything. Do it right now. Go subscribe right now. I'm going to give you like 2 seconds. Let's get into today's video. So number 1 on the list is kind of the most obvious. We're going to just knock that one out the way quick, just get it out of here, and then we'll go on to the more, in-depth thing. So graphically, the game's going to improve graphically. We see it every generation leap. Now, what's interesting is if you go back to Madden 25, right? Madden 25, and you look at it on the 360 versus the Xbox One, or the PS3 versus the PS4, you can still see kind of a noticeable jump. At the time, might not have seemed as noticeable, but when you go back and look at it now, you notice definitely was a big difference. Now, of course, it's not as big of a jump as like when you went from PS2 to PS3, and yes, this generation I don't think you're going to see a huge leap, because honestly we're kind of at that point where the graphics are so damn good. There's only going to be so much of a leap, but there is a bigger way that the games are going to be leaping forward kind of graphically, which we'll touch on in a little bit later in this video. But you're going to get more textures, of course. You're going to see, better face scans. You're going to see the stadiums and the fields look better. You can expect all of that. That kind of just goes without saying. So now that we got that out of the way, let's get on to number 2. So number 2 is going to be the solid state drives. A lot of you might know what this is. Some of you might still not really be familiar. This is something that computers have been supporting, forever. Or maybe not forever, but for a long ass time. And it's one of the main reasons PC gaming is better, among other reasons, of course. But this technology is now coming to the consoles. I believe you could have still installed a SSD of your own in your console, but that's not something most people really do. Now they're going to come with them already there. And the main thing this cuts down on is load times, right? And every time we kind of go to a new system, you would sometimes expect load times to get better, but sometimes it's almost like they get worse, because while the systems are more powerful, the games are also, they're using that power. So there's a lot more complex things to load. Graphically, they get better. So all that takes time to load, obviously. So, but here's something interesting, and those of you that have experienced this can attest to it. So, if you just take a regular Xbox One versus the Xbox One X, the load times are pretty drastically different. If you were loading into, let's say, like a Play Now game or an offline franchise game, or like a solo challenge, an Ultimate Team, and you're doing that on the Xbox One or the regular PS4, it takes like 40 to 45 seconds. Now, if you have the PS4 Pro or the Xbox One X, you go from that 40 to 45 seconds to basically 15 seconds. Pretty big difference. It shaves off a lot of time. That's what you're going to get going forward. You're going to get not only faster load times, but you're going to have more powerful games that are also loading faster. So it's not that, usually when your game gets more powerful, the load times still kind of suffer, because yes, like I said, the hardware is more powerful, but the game itself, there's a lot more going on that they have to load. But the power that these systems are starting to kind of, come with now, and then when you add the SSD to this, you're going to be loading into games pretty much instantly now. They did, a kind of a test run of a Spider-Man game, and it showed that they loaded into this open world in about 5 seconds flat. And you have to also consider, that's a big open world game. It's much more sophisticated than like a Madden or NBA 2K, and that took 5 seconds to load. So your load times for Madden, as far as we know, they're going to be pretty much instant. And I don't know about you, but to me, that's a big deal. It cuts down a lot of time. It gets me right into the game, which is what I want to be doing. Now, number 3 on the list is ray tracing. Now, this goes back kind of to part 1 when we talked graphically. So, as we said, the graphical leaps are not going to be as great ever again, because we're already so good, right? Like I said, PS2 to PS3, big leap, but PS3 to PS4, nice leap, not crazy. And now this gen, it's probably, again, it's going to be nice, but not crazy. But the way that companies and developers are making games take that bigger leap now, instead of just, relying on, hey, the graphics are going to look so much more better that it's just going to blow people away, they're now focused much more on making the lighting and the sound better. And while that might seem like a little thing, that goes a long way in your experience when you're playing a game, especially lighting. Not even just video games, when you're doing video, movies, whatever the case. Lighting makes all the difference in the world, and now the lighting technology is getting so much better in these games, and that is what makes the graphics look even better than just the natural graphic jump that you get in the first place. It's the fact that the lighting makes it look much more realistic, and with the ray tracing technology, they can now focus that light on certain areas and that they want to highlight more, that they need to kind of add more shading to, or whatever the case is. I don't know the entire breakdown of the technology, but I do know that, I watched some videos on it, and it basically just makes the worlds look much more realistic. Whether you're in an open world game, or if you're just on a football field or a basketball court, it's going to make a world of difference. So think of like a natural football field, right? It's it's worn in because you're playing football on it. The paint chips away on the field, whereas like in Madden, the field looks pristine almost at all times for the most part. Ray tracing is going to help things like that out, make the field look like a real life field, make the stadium, the way they can shine lights on certain parts of the stadium and the players, it's going to make the players' faces look more realistic. It's going to make the stadiums look more realistic. It's going to make the basketball court and the crowds look more realistic. So that's really where you're going to see the biggest graphical jump, is with the ray tracing technology. Something I'm excited to see how this is implemented and how this is used. I think it's going to make these games look a lot more beautiful than they do now. Number 4 on the list. This is a really big one. And I'm actually going to read off something here because I don't want to actually miss any of these points. So this is going to be a bigger deal for the PlayStation and the Xbox, but it's still going to matter for both. So the haptic feedback technology is going to change the way games feel. Now, this is taken from an article written about the PlayStation 5 controller, and it says, haptic feedback will replace the DualShock 4's rumble technology. While the rumble technology seen in the PS4 controller vibrates intensely during particular in-game events, it wasn't particularly fine-tuned to the player's experience. Haptic feedback simulates touch, meaning the controller will output vibrations or movements to replicate a real-life touch experience. This aims to improve the controller's feedback and therefore player immersion. And then the Sony CEO said this. He said, 3D audio and haptic feedback support of the controller are also things that when you try them, you will be surprised at how big of a change they are. Even just playing the racing game Gran Turismo Sport with the PlayStation 5 controller is a completely different experience. While it runs well with the previous controller, there is no going back once you experience the detailed road surface via haptic control and play using the adaptive triggers. Now, the adaptive triggers in the PS5 controller also feature I guess it's kind of like another form of haptic feedback potentially, but basically it's what's been incorporated into the triggers, which is the L2 and R2 buttons, or on Xbox think the left trigger, right trigger buttons. These adaptive triggers will allow developers to program the resistance of the triggers to simulate actions more accurately. Now, what does this all mean for Madden, and what does it mean for Xbox? So first off, Xbox does have, all these controllers have a form of haptic feedback in it. When you play the game, when you land a hit stick, it's a lot of rumbling, right? And things like that. When you're about to get sacked, the controller rumbled, right? Which is cool. It definitely adds a little more immersion to the game, but it's kind of going a next level further, especially with the PlayStation 5 controller, where you might feel a rumble just on one side. So if maybe if you have a blitzer coming from one side, it's going to rumble to that side. How you get hit sticked, where like the part of your body you get hit sticked on, the controller can rumble on that spot of the controller. So it's like, what you're feeling on the controller is what is happening in game. But the bigger thing with this is how they can add the resistance to the triggers. And I've also heard, I don't know if this is 100% true, but I've heard people talk about they can program that same resistance into the actual joystick. But don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure. But definitely in the triggers, they can make them stiffer based on the on-field situation. So if you're trying to break out of a tackle or something and you're trying to hold down that trigger, it's going to be stiffer. You're going to be feeling the resistance of what's going on in the field. And that to me is a huge change, because when we talk about we want gameplay to be better and we want the game to be more realistic and immersive, you can't get much more immersive than the controller being super responsive to what you are actually witnessing and what you are going through on field. When your controller, has resistance based on what's happening and it's vibrating based on what's happening in certain areas, that's going to, like they said in the article, it's going to make it hard to go back to not playing that way. It might seem like a small change, but it's one of those things that I feel like when you experience it, you're going to realize, whoa, like this just made the game experience crazier. Now, the Xbox controller, they haven't really talked about a lot of that with it. It already does does support haptic feedback. It'll probably be a little bit better than currently, but this is a feature definitely that seems like it's going to make the PS5 version of the game a little bit more immersive and cooler than the Xbox version. So something to think about. And last but not least, number 5, just the hardware in itself being better and what that really means for the game, right? You're going to have increased frame rates, which I think could be really huge, right? Because, I mean, we already have really good frame rates now, but think about how much better they're about to get, which means the game's going to play smoother. And that's an area that Madden struggles, is smoothness at times. And, you know, that's not just a frame rate issue. A lot of that is just some core gameplay problems. But by increasing the frame rate, you're going to have a smoother experience, both on Madden, both on 2K. Really going to be big for 2K because 2K is such an up and down, fast-paced game, just constant back and forth action. You know, it's going to, I think, make a bigger difference there, especially like with shot timing and stuff like that. But for Madden, when you think about juking and trying to make people miss in the open field and maneuvering your QB in the pocket, these increased frame rates are going to help make that a much more smoother and just a better experience. And not only that, just you're going to see things load out faster because, you know, both of the hardware, SSDs and things like that. And this will probably be bigger for open world games, but like a big problem with games like racing games, for example, is sometimes like you can only move so fast, you can only go so fast because like the game can only the game can't keep up with you essentially at times. So it has to, like, there's like only like in a racing game like a top speed you can get to. You can only move so fast through the city no matter how skilled you are because the game can only keep up to a certain point. Well, with the new hardware and things like that, that's not going to be as much of an issue, and we've seen demonstrations of this, of how you can just like fly through cities and just like move at such a faster pace. And I believe this could also be true for sports games as well. You're going to be able to maneuver and move faster on field than maybe you previously were able to, which will lead to a better and more realistic experience. But aside from that, if the game still sports a ton of other core gameplay issues, you know, that stuff's only going to cover it up so much. You're still going to have issues with the game. But those are the 5 biggest ways that the next gen systems are going to be changing Madden 21. I think it's going to be a really fun experience. Also, you're going to be able to upgrade Madden 21 for free, as they said, if you did purchase it on the previous systems. As long as I think you upgrade it before March of this coming year, you can upgrade for free on the new system. So that's something to think about as well if you're kind of concerned about waiting or getting the game on current gen. But that's going to be all for today. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Subscribe if you're new, and as always, I will see you guys next time.